Okay, first of all, using PowerPoint, which I haven't done much before. As you can see, it's not working. Why isn't it working, Joel?
What's the deal with the lights?
Ross. I don't know why it's not working. There we go. All right, I just want to thank the following people. Dwight McCarron has been a huge help. He's just a wealth of knowledge. Rich Fitzpatrick's helped me out a lot with maps, and he's found some good information for me. Dave Foley, who's the research guru. He's forgotten more than I've ever learned about research. He's an amazing person. I put Cheryl Giuliano Manning, next student of mine. Her great-grandfather was Harris, as in the pond's named after. Phil McNulty, who's the superintendent of water and sewer in Stoughton. He was a big help. I met with him the other day. And Josh Olson for creating this program. Okay, this is one of my pet peeves. I know Mr. Karabatzes will like this one. It is Harris's pond, not Harrison's. Everyone's called Harrison's. And technically the name is Pinewood Pond, sometimes referred to as Pinewood Lake. I don't know when it morphed into that, but that is the actual technical name. Okay, this shows you, I got a little laser pointer here, shows you where the pond is, which I think everybody can obviously see. This is my first time using a laser pointer. That's the pond right there. This is Central Street. Lakewood Drive's right there. Okay, so now you know where it is. D'Angelo's are right about, I think there, right around there. Polio's Garden Center up in this area somewhere. Okay, so that's where it's located. Now, this is an old map, as you can see, from 1794. I can't lie, I don't know much about this part of the history. Like, if you notice, it's on the map, it's right up in this area, right around here. As you see, there's no pond. We've concluded the Drakes owned a large amount of the property there, as did the First Parish Universalist Church, which one is it, Dwight? Universalist Church. Okay. Just can't see my notes now, it's dark. That's another map, it's of 1826. Obviously a little bit later. As you can see, it's a little more populated, but once again, no pond. It would be in this area here. Pond's non-existent. Okay, this is a map, which I meant to ask Richard about this one. It's listed from 1726 to 1826. But once again, you can look in this time frame and why isn't it clicking? Well, there's no pond up there either, as you can see. Okay, this is a little bit of the chain of ownership, and there's some definite gaps. Mary Finney, who was the wife of a very wealthy business owner in Stoughton, she bought the land from a person named Ebenezer Drake, rather. The date exactly is unknown. From what I've researched, it doesn't have a date as fixed to it. Then Amasa Lincoln bought the property from Mary Finney in 1888. Then the town bought it in 1897. I'm going to get to that a little later on. And then finally in 1902, the guy the pond's named after, William H. Harris, bought it. And that's the person gave the name. Okay, I skipped ahead here. Okay, now these next few slides, let me see, read what I had about it. Amasa Lincoln bought it from Mary Finney, as I said, it was known as Lincoln Farm. The Lincoln or Chemung Farm was around 133 acres and was used to grow hay and raise cattle. Amasa Lincoln was actually a resident of Raynham who fought in the Civil War. He was a member of the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, which is people who fought in the Civil War. They were still alive. He died in 1928. He was the last remaining member of the GAR. As a result, that post ended with his death. Mr. Lincoln became ill and wanted to sell the property to the town. Sorry, I get this mixed up here. He wanted to sell the property to the town. I don't know why I skipped to that one, to be honest with you. For $12,000. Okay, the town gave him $14,000 for it. And people weren't too happy about that once they found out. And I'm going to get to that again in just a second. Okay. Now the town wanted, the main reason why they wanted, I have no idea why I skipped that. I'm sorry, I'm going back here. But if you look on this map right here, you can see right there. This is what's known as Knowles Brook. Now, back then, they wanted to buy it to specifically to tap into the water supply there. And as you're going to find out in a second, that never happened. Now, what happened was some people weren't too happy about this transaction. There was a few reasons why. One reason was because of the fact that it got word out that he got $2,000 above the asking price. They weren't too happy about that. And also, people were very angry because he happened to be on the Water Commission. So it was a backdoor deal. And so twice it went to the Massachusetts Supreme Court, and eventually the sale was negated. Okay. I apologize. First venture with PowerPoint. I'm a retired teacher here. Okay. The town did eventually buy the land, but it was never really used as a water source. Now, an interesting side note about this picture right here. This is the Revere factory, which is where, for people who grew up in Stoughton, where Plymouth Rubber is in Canton. Okay, it's another picture of the Plymouth factory. This part right here, as you're going to see in a minute, it's now a restaurant and a museum is beside it. That's the restaurant now. Now, the relevance behind this is that thanks to Richard Fitzpatrick, he found this little thing. He did a research on cannons, and they found out the Revere Copper Company was located in Canton, tested their cannons at Lincoln Farm. The exact date isn't known, but we figure out sometime after, obviously, between 1912 or so. The quote in the article that Richard gave me says the cannonballs were so powerful they crashed through the trees as large as a man's body. Okay, this was passed on by the past commander of the GAR, a guy by the name of Herbert O. Holmes. He said the date is actually unknown about that. But it's interesting to find out that cannons were made by Paul Revere's factory were actually fired at Harris's Pond. I never found any cannonballs when I was out fishing or whatever. Now, the person who ran Revere's factory, his name is Frederick Walker Lincoln. And I've looked high and low, and I haven't found any direct relationship between him and Amasis Lincoln. So I don't think there's any relation, but you never know. He actually was Paul Revere's grandson. Okay. Another picture of the cannon. These are the cannons that are at Faxon Park. I suppose it's the same exact type of cannons that we use.
So like you said,
Yep.
one of them says on the face of it, made by Paul Revere.
Yes.
So we know that one of the cannons was made in Canton, supposedly test fired up at Lincoln Pond, and then was one of the two given back to Stoughton after the Civil War. So that cannon made quite a journey, but we got it back finally.
Thank you. Okay, now, like I said before, Cheryl Giuliano Manning was a great granddaughter of William H. Harris. She gave me some pictures and some other documents. This is an actual picture of William H. Harris. Handsome devil that he was. That's his lovely wife, Rose Harris. Now, I've more or less concluded through some research that the farmhouse was somewhere, if you're familiar with that area, you go Lakewood Drive off of Central Street, there's a fork in the road, and it go to Dave Foley as well. We're pretty confident it was somewhere on the top of the hill here. Now, this supposedly is a picture of the farmhouse. I don't have any verification of it. What picture she gave me, she's insisting it's the farmhouse. So we're gonna go with that's the farmhouse. But it's a pretty big structure. Now, somewhere between 1915 and 1924, Harris decided that he was going to dam this river, this brook right here that ran right through the property. And we believe somewhere after 1912, between 1915 and 1924, Harris's poem was actually born, or created rather, excuse me, not born. We don't know. There's no records. I've been to the water department. I've looked everywhere. We don't know an exact date of when that's formed, but we think it's somewhere within that time frame. Okay, but we think the actual dam was right about one pointer. Okay, well, so much for that. Now, this is a view about where the dam is. Now, this little peninsula, for people that are from the town, I don't know if you knew any of the Swanbergs. That's where they lived, in that little peninsula there. That's a view from right about where the dam was. That was from back in the early 1900s, or mid 1900s. That's the view today. As you can see, it's kind of weeded in here a little bit, but that's more or less where the dam is. I know it's not too exciting, but that's probably where the dam was.
Is the dam where the street is now?
Yeah, it goes right on the Lakewood Drive. You go right there, that's Lakewood Drive. And when I was a kid, it come out a lot faster than it does now. Now it's barely trickling out there, unfortunately. Okay, also, I've read about them. They had an ice house on Harris's Pond. These are some old pictures of the pond itself. If you throw those ones in, you can compare them now and then. Now, this is supposedly a picture of the ice house that was on the Harris property. Again, no definite confirmation of that, but it looks pretty similar. You get the high pine trees in the background there. And this is probably from what's now known as Lakewood Drive. I'm hoping somewhere along the line I'll be able to confirm that's definitely where it was. But okay, somewhere between, the source of Harris Pond is somewhat of a mystery. This is where it really gets a little bit confusing. Now, there's a seasonal pond that forms between the pumping station and Chemung Street that supplies some of the water. I know, Bob, you've seen that before. Dwight's seen that. If you're facing Harris's Pond in the bottom left-hand corner, you see the pumping station way up in the back there. If you walk up there towards Chemung Hill, there's a good size, I wouldn't call it a pond, but it's more like a puddle where water accumulates and it trickles down into there. Okay, but this particular picture right here, this is a culvert. Now, this culvert didn't exist when I was a kid. It was a natural culvert that wasn't actually built like this. But this particular culvert shows some of the runoff, what's now Dakota Drive and Bay Road and all the other streets up there. What are the other ones up there, Dwight? You seem to know the street names up
Smith
there.
Avenue, Smith, Woodpecker.
Woodpecker, yeah. Well, and I'm going to show you in just a couple minutes, but all the water seems to flow down from Bay Road. And this, when I was there the other day, this was really flowing out of there. And it leads into a place I'm going to show you in just a couple minutes. Okay, now, as a kid, in the back of the pond, again, facing from Lakewood Drive, there was a place, the only place in the pond that never froze in the winter. Now, I doubt very much it's a picture of Harris's Pond. Again, I don't know that for sure. This is one of the pictures that Cheryl Giuliano Manning gave me. I don't think it was the pond, but that's just going to show what a spring can work like. Okay, but the next picture will show you what it looks like today. Now, when I was a kid, this was an area that was flowing rather freely. It would run downhill from up in the woods, and then it would come out of the ground. It wasn't always on the surface, but now as you can see, it's basically just mud. There's a little trickle of water. Now, I've always been of the opinion that there were springs back there and the pond was spring fed. And I did find a little bit of evidence, and you probably can't see these, not the best photographer in the world, but right exactly where I said, I found these two pipes, which were probably wells at one point. Well, I don't know what other reason they'd be there. There were those two. There were also these two. So there were like 4 pipes in the general area there. So I'm guessing at some point in time, the rumor was, and I should probably stick with what we're reading here, but that the town did in fact cap those for water supply. But I'll get
the back left of the pond.
back right. If as you're facing the pond from Lakewood Drive, it's the back right. Okay, now I'll get back to it in just a second. But the town, this shows this is the map. And I gave this map to Dwight the other day because Dwight's our resident waterologist. Just made that word up. But this is Bay Road here. Just point of work. This is Bay Road. Almost all the water, and let me phrase that, the water all comes from this area down this way. Okay, obviously this section of town is different altogether. But you got the various pumping stations here. You got Muddy Pond. You got Harris, I think is right there. I can't read what that one is. I can't see it offhand. But anyways, they all run down from some water source in Sharon. That much the water department knows for sure. And that's more than a coincidence, all these pumping stations in this area here. Okay, now, this is the Harris Pond Pumping Station. What a beautiful building. Okay, not so much. Big signs and gates, you can't go in there. Although I know somebody that probably walked right up there, right, Dwight?
I didn't go in.
Oh, okay. There's a big sign with,
Up that road.
there's a picture here with Dwight with his picture with a line through it. Dwight tends to go to places he's not supposed to go. But that is in fact the Harris Pond Pumping Station. And originally it was a much smaller building. They've added on to it a little bit. And this is originally the water in Harris Pond. Let me backtrack a little bit here. Behind here, out in the woods, you'll find pipes in the ground. Now, originally, they did in fact drive pipes in the ground and they tapped into the well water there. And what they would do, using gravity, would ship it down to this pumping station, which is the oldest one in Stoughton, 1888. So that's even older than me. But the water eventually, like I said, was gravity that brought it down to there. Now, Phil McNulty, who's a water superintendent, this is a quote from him. He says, Harris has some of the best water in the water system. Now, that might shock people because everybody thinks of two places in particular as always being polluted, quote unquote, Harris's Pond and Ames Pond. And he says the quality of water at Harris Pond is actually very good, which kind of surprised me. Now, Harris's Pond pumping station, that little building there pumps 750 gallons a minute, which is a lot of water. And it's very active. So Dwight, that answers your question. It's definitely used for the water system. And he said, we're getting more and more self-reliant and we're not as reliant on MWRA water.
Now, when you said the water was good, did he mean the water in the pond?
The quality they pump up, the quality they pump up.
Out of the well.
Yeah. Which kind of caught me by surprise, but. And it's kind of neat. In this building is where the water department is. And he showed me on his computer, he could put any of the pumping station up on the water on his computer. You can see how much it's pumping and it tests the quality of it. If he has to adjust it, like sometimes you get a chlorine taste in it, you know, he can easily adjust this with a click of his mouse, which I thought was pretty interesting. Okay, now this next slide, this is a map of 1924. As you can see, nothing was built there yet. As you can see the pond, I gotta give you a frame of reference here. Come on. Okay, this would be Lakewood Drive, which by the way, Lakewood Drive, I don't know the exact date. I've looked for that when it went all the way to Bay Road, but for the longest time it didn't go all the way to Bay Road. I'm not exactly sure where it ended either. That's one of the things I'm continuing to research. But this is the back of the pond, right? What I'm talking about. Right. Oh, so much for that. All right, this shows a little more of an advanced plan. These maps Dave Foley found, by the way. This one shows the plan for the streets, which some of these streets were never even built, I might add, but this was the original plan in 1924. And then in 1925, this is a smaller section right about the area I grew up. Pinewood Lake isn't shaped like that, by the way, but I grew up on Greenwood Ave. And probably right about there, I think I grew up. It's kind of a distorted map. But these lots on this, from Lakewood Drive to my house, is 2 houses. So as you can see, there's no, and the lots weren't that big either. So that plan obviously failed miserably too. Now,
lot size is 25 feet wide.
yeah, but
Those ones there?
Yeah, because I have more pages from that set.
Yeah.
25 feet. So like my house, I'm in this development area. We have a 100-foot front, but it's actually 4 25-foot lots.
which leads to the next one. This was the proposal for Lakewood Pines in 1938. As you can see, that's a lot of lots. Oh, that's kind of redundant. Many lots. Okay, I apologize for the hole in the map. Unfortunately, there's a hole in the map. There wasn't anything I could do about that. I don't know where the missing part was. I found this one at the Historical Society. Somebody had grand plans for this area. I mean, like your neighborhood, look at what your neighborhood would have been like if it went through. I don't care how small those lots are, that's still a lot of building. And that never happened. Now, in regards to that, I think the main reason because the outbreak of World War II, I think that shut everything down. Now, after looking at stuff, jumping to my friends there, after World War II had ended, building exploded in this area of the pond. Many houses around the pond, mine included, were built as cottages that many in the city would hopefully buy and use them seasonally. That just kind of blows my mind that people would come out of the city of Boston to Harris's Pond for vacation. You know, that was their vacation spot. Most people go to Florida or something like that, but they actually, my house was a cottage, no basement. It was heated, but unfortunately, like no basement, it was wide open. And a lot of the houses around the pond were the same way. Unfortunately, I don't think it happened the way it was planned. Many people, like my parents, bought it as a permanent residence. That definitely added the increased problem with the quality of the water because most had cesspools, which we did, which seeped right into the pond, obviously. Later on, people got septic tanks, which also seeped into the pond, a little less than a cesspool. Eventually, many people got town sewage, which were one of the people that did get town sewage. So safe to say, and they used to have this problem with Ames Pond too for a while. All the houses around the pond here, which ironically don't show houses being around the pond here, like I guess there, it's definitely houses there. It would seep right into the pond. So it's no wonder over years and years of time, and luckily with Title IX, Title V rather, that's the sewer, the septic thing, right? They have eradicated that problem, hopefully. Okay, next is our most famous residents of the pond, the swans. Now, this is not a current picture. Like the one picture I got of the swans, it was too far away, they were being shy. Now, unfortunately, and I hate to be negative here, but snapping turtle love these little baby swans, unfortunately. And I said, what happened to the swans? And I'm going to get an educated guess that snapping turtle probably had a little bit of a feast there, unfortunately. Not maybe, hopefully these ones survive, but as you can see, this is a picture of the pond. I mean, this is what the pond was totally overrun with. I mean, there were lily pads everywhere, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. But I think these are probably the most famous residents of the town. Okay, the next set of pictures are going to show a little stroll down memory lane, and it's with a purpose. This is the house I grew up in. Now, anybody, I don't know what year car that would be. Maybe somebody can help me with that one. Yeah, I think it was in the 50s. My parents moved to this house. I was, I think, a year old. So they moved in about 1958. But as you can see, I mean, we didn't have oil heat, didn't have gas heat. We had propane heat on the side there. Okay, it was a tiny house, 7 kids.
So what did you burn out of that chimney? You had a wood.
We had a fireplace. We didn't burn anything out of it though. It was strictly heated with propane. It was tiny little propane tanks.
So someday there'll be a plaque on this house, right?
Yeah. I don't think I put the modern picture up there. Like I said, there was 7 of us in that small house, including, and there's 9 counting my parents. 2 bedrooms. So eventually when my parents had kids number 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, excuse me, they decided they better build another bedroom. I roomed with my 3 older sisters for a long time. This is another view of the house, a little blurred, but I'm not the best photographer in the world. But as you can see, lots of trees around there. They aren't all there now. But we used to have a cesspool. We saw a well somewhere in there. Right up in this area here, the front of the lawn. Over here was a cesspool. And the pond's right there, and you used to seep right. And then the septic was put in there. Now this is the view. This view is kind of a neat view. This is the back of my house. And this is from the pond. And I'm going to show you other pictures. This is what we call the cove. I'll show you a better picture of that in a second. But it was like our own little playground in this area here because it was all ours. Back here, we also had a chimney in the back, which we would burn trash in there, believe it or not. Another thing we don't do anymore. Used to always burn trash back there. Used to be blueberry bushes back here. It was a great place to live. Now, this is another picture before I got sided, as you can see. Not that exciting. This is another picture, and these are family pictures of my sisters and everything, but this is another picture from we saw a bridge right there, which I'm gonna show you in a second. This led out to the pond as well. Again, kind of a neat area. Sad, you look at that now, it's almost all dried up. It's kind of sad to go by them and see that. No, this isn't me. It's my younger brother's attempt to play hockey. But we had this pond, the cove right there, and we literally, the back door was here. It wasn't there, but that was a shed. Like 3 or 4 steps, boom, I was on the pond. And I could fish there. It was like I said, it was a great place to grow up. Now, this is me. I was adorable.
What
Downhill
happened?
ever since. But it's a great view. I put this on not to show that I was adorable, but just to show you the view here. This bridge was just awesome. Now, this cove, as you can see, a lot of water in there. And Dwight, you've been by there before. There's nothing there now.
Just the water flow right from. right to
It
left.
flows from right to left. It pretty much comes down from that, where that culvert is. Yeah, and it used to be a little bit of backflow too. And what's great about this, we could stay out there on the bridge, and we'd see fish coming in. It was so crystal clear, and you would just cast. Just point, it would work, right? We would cast on the other side of the bridge, and it was like sort of like fishing in a fish tank. But right here, you'd see the fish go under the bridge. We got you. We'd be able to do all kinds of fishing there. No, we never swam in there, although I did fall in there once. That's a different story altogether. But that bridge was pretty neat. That was there when we got there, and it brought us obviously to the other side. But now this wonderful feature here, this wonderful creature, I'm going to tell you about in just a second. But when I was a kid, on Harris's Pond, we used to spend a lot of time out on our boats. Just about everybody that lived on the pond had boats. And we go fishing, spend a lot of time fishing. We reach right in the water, grab snakes. There are lots of snakes in there. We'd grab snapping turtles, which was pretty stupid in retrospect. The sun turtles are a lot more peaceful. But this is and we used to go ice skating, and yes, we actually went swimming. Now, this is an ugly beast. These things live for some of them over 200 years. I'll tell you a legend about one of these in a minute, but you don't want to mess with these things. These things are not nice people, nice beasts, believe me. I'll get to that in a little bit. Fishing in Harris's Pond is still outstanding. Rick Hearn, who's in the back there, he's fished there, and it's got some great fish. It's got pickerel, bass. We call them hornpout. It's like a version of a catfish. Freshwater eels. I mean, there's all kinds of fish in there, and it's a really good place to fish. I won't reveal the best places to fish, so I don't want to spoil that. Never supposed to say that. But it was definitely a nice place to fish. Now, this is a picture of them boating back some point in time when the Harrises owned the property. This is my brother and I think a neighbor. And even at this point, you can see there isn't a lot of water in the cove here. Okay, you can see some trees, some branches that were underneath there. I don't know when that was cut down, but you can see the water was definitely getting gunked up even then. And that was in the 60s.
Is that the bridge to the left? or-
You can't really see the bridge. You see a little bit of the bridge over on the left-hand top.
Yeah.
Right up there, probably. That bridge, I mean, it used to be great. You could put your skates on right there and everything, but it was awesome. Okay, now also at Harris's Pond, and I put these pictures on just to show you how it was unbelievably great for ice skating. I mean, look at the cars lined up on Lakewood Drive there. That's a lot of cars. And this place was always packed with people fishing. Now, where the dam was in this area right over here, right over this vicinity here. Over here is totally overrun with weeds, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. But it used to be phenomenal for skating. Okay, I think that's my cousin, I think. Not that I'm pretty sure that's probably my cousins too. But as you can see how clear it is, I mean, it's very rare you see a pond where you can skate all over the pond like we did back then. I know I sound like an old timer. Back in the day, that's my brother being chased by one of my younger sisters. By the way, Dwight talked about my hockey ability. Those were my first skates right there. My sisters went out there with figure skates. I look like a fool, but motivated me to be what I was. Okay, that's my brother falling because he can never skate. Hopefully he's watching this online in South Carolina. Okay, another family picture, but just showing the background there. This is towards the back of the pond. Same view, more or less. Now, unfortunately, sometimes people fell through the pond. This obviously is a made-up picture. This really didn't happen. However, this one person made the varsity hockey team his freshman year. And at the time, we used to practice before school. I kind of slipped, you know, it was. They used to practice before school in the morning. And he was so excited that afternoon, he came home with his equipment from head to toe, brand new hockey equipment, goes out of the pond, and this is what happened. Talk about going from the penthouse to the outhouse. Unfortunately, I fell through. And it's kind of funny. I come out from the cove, I'm flying on the ice, I'm all my equipment from head to toe, and boom, I go right in. And anybody tells you fall in water that's ice water, and Dwight, I'm sure in your travels you've done that before. It's not easy to get out because your body really reacts to it. And unfortunately, it says right here, I think a fireman fell and broke his leg. I don't think it tells you that. I was in waist deep water, so I was up to here, but I couldn't get out of the water. Every time I tried to get out, the ice would crack. And so my mother panicked. She called the fire department, the police department. It's all things that changed. The policeman drove me in his police car to the hospital, and they wrapped me up in blankets. And then my equipment went in the dryer, and I practiced the next morning at 5 a.m. So, but that's one thing I like to poke fun of myself at. Not one of my more glorious days of my hockey career, that's for sure. Okay, now the swimming part of it. What would a Stoughton history lecture be without a Pratt involved in it? Now, this is Rich Pratt's older brother, Bob. I erroneously called him his uncle. And he was a lifeguard. Rich identified this as 1957. So as you can see, they used to actually have lifeguards there. Now, I was only 1 year old, so I don't remember swimming in 1957 in Harris's Pond. It was 1956. It was in the program book. Yeah, that was in the 1960s. Yeah, it was. I found out they did swim in it in the 50s, but then also they swim it in the 60s, which was probably about when I was like 7 or 8 years old. That sounds about right, early 60s then. Yeah, they did clean it up. Unfortunately, there was broken bottles in there and stuff like that. Right. But they tried to make this like what Ames Pond came to be, and it never took off for some reason. No, it wasn't at all, which was good for me because I was a kid. Now, I did find this beauty in my research. They actually had swimming lessons there. Now, Bob Malpe identified, talked about getting swimming lessons by a guy named Harley Gibbs, and I researched it. Harley Gibbs had a brother, Richard Gibbs, unless Richard Gibbs was his nickname was Harley, which I doubt. But I did search, unfortunately, the obituaries, and I found that Richard Gibbs had a brother, Harley. So I'm assuming it was a brotherly act, but they used to actually have swim lessons there, just like they have at Ames Pond. Yep. So it was Harley Gibbs. So Bob said it was probably in the late 50s. He said like 58, I think he told me. So Richard Gibbs might have been later, I don't know. But this is the same type of things that they offer now at Ames Pond. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, now one of the more popular stories is a legend, and we swore by this. Everybody that lived in that area swore by it. There was a legend of this huge turtle called Jumbo. Anybody ever hear of that before? Okay, well, Jumbo the turtle was this turtle that was supposedly, and I've heard, from as big as a Volkswagen Bug to the size of the hood of a Volkswagen Bug to the size of the roof of a Volkswagen Bug. He was pretty big, if he even existed. Did you ever see him? I never saw him. I think it's like the Loch Ness Monster, personally. But anyways, there were lots of snapper turtles on there. Now, aside from the legend of Jumbo, this much I do know for a fact. When a big snapper turtle would get on Lakewood Drive, people would call the police would come and shoot it, which sounds kind of crazy, but like I said, they're not nice animals at all. And they would shoot it, just like they do with roadkill, they have people they would call up. I wish I could remember the name. There was one guy in particular, and I can't remember his name for the life of me. He used to come down and take it, and he used to make turtle soup out of it. And I don't know if they use anything else for it, but it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, and the funny thing about it, not funny, but in retrospect, it's kind of funny. The kids would be all around. They'd be shooting, shooting the turtle in front of little kids. You think they might get a little spooked by that, but so at least that part I do know is true about the snapper turtles.
Those are the good old days.
Yeah, back in the day, when you could shoot a turtle in the middle of the road, nobody cared. Okay, now I already talked about the spring, and like I said, honestly, whether or not it's true, I just have to say, we don't know. And even the water department has zero records of that. But that's the same picture I showed you earlier, which shows it just kind of dribbling down.
So is that in behind the well, the pumping station?
No, this is to the right. Just, yeah, towards the right. Now, it's just the same pictures. I was going to tell you about those again. Now, the next thing I talk about is, sadly, the pond has been overrun with weeds, which everybody, I think, has the vivid picture of that. People that haven't been to Harrison in a long time, like my older brother, my younger brother who lives in South Carolina, some of my sisters haven't been by there. They're amazed at what they've done to it. Now, this is actually Ames Pond. If you look closely, you can probably find Dwight in the woods back there somewhere.
Right to the left.
Yeah, so this is when they went in there and they chopped up some of the, it's like a reaper type of machine where they cut up some of the weeds and they literally like kind of rake them out of there. But they add this treatment called Sonar, which is a natural herbicide that I guess does an amazing job. It's non-toxic. And anybody's been by Ames Pond, I mean, Ames Pond's beautiful. I mean, I'm amazed how beautiful it is. And that's how what Ames Pond was looking like. Well, the same thing went on with Harris's Pond. And as you can see now, that's what Harris's Pond looks like nowadays. That was taken recently. This is more, to your answer, Dwight, where I'm talking about the springs, probably in that area there. I think I got a picture in a second I'm going to show you. Okay, and as you can see, unfortunately, the front part of the pond, and I don't know if there's, yeah, it is. It actually is. Those are the ones that were too far away from me. But as you can see, if you go to Harris's Pond, you got all these cat nine tails and weeds. And I don't know why they can't cut them down. There's probably some environmental reason why.
They do come in the fall and often cut them down. They just cut them to a level. They don't.
Yeah, it's too bad because,
Trim them.
and that's the view right across the street from Harris's, where there's a little turnabout there. You could park, and people used to park. We were kids. We used to, on our boats, sneak up to shore, go over to the cars. The couples were parking, shine the lights on them, take off into the boat. They wouldn't know where we were. We used to sleep out in the boat out there too, which was actually very relaxing. But that's sad that that's the view of this beautiful pond. Now that's the view I showed you earlier of the dam again. But look at how clear that water is. That wasn't the case not that long ago until they did that sonar treatment. That's a view from a little bit further to the right of where I just showed their picture. You can't even see the pond. It's kind of unfortunate. I'm going to try to talk to somebody and see if they can cut it down. I don't know why they can't cut it down for good, but there's got to be some reason why, I would think.
Well, I think cat and nine tails aren't considered intrusive, so. But, yeah, but they're not, but